So Vicki, tell us what makes women a specific or distinctive part of the American electorate?
So the question is, why look at women distinctively in separation, say, from men or the aggregate numbers? And the issue here is that women vote, and they have consistently outvoted men over the past 30 years. And this is a pattern that holds across the board with African American women, Latinas. We also see it across age groups, especially up until about the mid-50s. So women are an electorate that candidates and political parties can consistently count on for turning out to vote, and also we see them with consistently higher registration rates. So here is why when we look at elections, we know that the candidates are so focused on the female vote because they show up.
So in addition to turnout rates, there's also this notion of the gender gap. Talk to us about that.
So the gender gap is looking at the percentage of women versus the percentage of men who prefer one candidate over the other. What this translates into is that we have seen women consistently preferring Democratic candidates over Republican candidates, a pattern that, again, we've seen over the past 30 years. In 2010, however, we saw this gender gap shrink a tad bit, where from 2010 we saw an increase of 16% in terms of a preference from women for the Republican candidate. So the question is, going into 2012, what is going to happen? Was this phenomenon in 2010 the exception that confirms the rule, or is it part of a bigger trend of women looking to Republican candidates?
So we've got recent data suggesting that we're seeing more movement again in that gender gap notion. How do you see that playing out in 2012?
Recent data that we have just gotten shows that the president still maintains that advantage. Women are preferring the president at a 2-to-1 margin over the Republican nominee, or presumptive Republican nominee, Romney. And what's interesting and problematic for Romney is that he has dropped about 14 percentage points among women. And this is so important because we know that women are that key electorate that can really swing the election one way or the other. First of all, because they vote at such great numbers, and because we've been seeing recent events putting women in the spotlight with regards to contraceptive issues and abortion, and they are getting very mobilized and wanting to come out for 2012 to make their voice heard.
Talk a little bit about how those issues in this campaign have played out.
Since February, we have seen the issue of contraception coverage under health care come into the spotlight. We also saw the recent controversy with the Komen Foundation and funding for Planned Parenthood. So this has served the purpose of mobilizing women on both ends. So in the Republican Party, we've seen Republican women mobilize and want to keep more of a separation between moral and religious issues in the government. And on the Democratic side, we have seen women mobilize and wanting to see more health care coverage for reproductive issues. But the question is, what are those women in the middle going to do? Data has shown us, however, that those independent women prefer coverage for contraceptive usage, which leans towards the president. So going into November, over the course of the next couple of months, we are going to have to see Romney or the Republican nominee come out and woo those women back because they are leaning more and more towards the president in that respect.
How about subgroups of women? We talked about the overall sort of gender gap. How about by race and ethnicity? What kind of patterns do we see in voting behavior?
The same holds for African American women and Latinas as we see with white women. They vote at much higher rates than their male counterparts, the largest discrepancy being with African American women. In fact, in 2008, Jim, African American women were the electorate that turned out at the highest rate. 64.4% of African American women turned out to vote. Latinas, on the other hand, even though they still vote more than the Latino counterparts, have the lowest turnout rate in comparison to other groups. Part of this being because large percentage of the Latino population is undocumented. Also, it's a very youthful population, but we do see some signs of increasing Latina turnout.
Well, Vicki, thank you very much.
My pleasure.